There was a time where there were lots of lawyers in legislation in Missouri and Kansas. That number has dropped. And I am an advocate for it because I feel like and of course legislation is made great. The legislature is made great by many different voices.
Sure.
But there are lawyers, the lawyers can bring the unique perspective of the ones that are going to be litigating the laws and being very familiar with the laws. Do you, as a lawyer and a legislature, are people looking to you for input in terms of, hey, how is this going to play out? In terms of that.
Well, I've always tried to be as honest and as upfront with the members that I serve with as possible. I always try to demonstrate as much integrity as I can, and I feel like I have built up a reputation with both the majority and the minority party of being somebody who might be trusted when it comes to asking how stuff like this might work. And I do tend to agree that having a background in law is helpful in certain areas, but I also know that the voices of all different types of backgrounds should be heard. The question I find myself asking a lot, at least to myself, is when somebody has a proposal for a new piece of legislation or a change that they want to see, the question I often find myself is, okay, what are these jury instructions going to look like? And then I work my way back from that. So especially when it comes to criminal or civil litigation, when they try to do tort reform or when they try to do criminal justice reform, the first question I'll always ask myself is, okay, how do these jury instructions work? And then I formulate that into trying to make a conversation with the bill sponsor, who often is not an attorney, and try to have a conversation with them about either making it workable in terms of how it's going to be applied in a courtroom, or how it's going to be interpreted when we have to submit those instructions to a jury and ask them to make a determination of whether or not that law was broken. Try to shape it in such a way that it will more closely conform to how we're going to use it in a courtroom. There are other situations or other times when I look at a piece of legislation and say, okay, this is marvelous, but there's no penalty provision at all. There's really you're making a law that has you're creating a potential violation of law that has no punishment and no remedy. And what is the purpose of that? Are we just passing laws for the sake of having words written on paper? Or are we, making the guidelines, the sort of the bumpers on the bowling alley, so to speak, of how folks in Missouri are going to go about their daily lives? And sometimes we're able to make changes to bills, and sometimes we're not. And usually in those situations, the bills don't make it to the finish line. Sometimes they do. Sometimes bad stuff happens. Sometimes we fight as hard as we can to prevent something bad from happening, and it happens anyway. I remember Senate Bill 43 that repealed most of the Missouri Human Rights Act was done in 2017, and that was probably one of the most odious things that I could have imagined happening. I was very disappointed in that, and still am. I would like to work to see some changes to right that ship and bring sort of the wheel of justice a little more centered on that way.